Hey everybody, we are back today with a video that quite a lot of you have been asking me about and looking forward to, so I'm happy to deliver with this one. We have the Ichang Papeda. So this is a very rare citrus in the United States. You will only find a handful of specimen trees, and we're lucky enough to have this one closer to us that we can pick up the fruit off the ground from and sample this for you guys and really show a comprehensive view of what just one of the many variations of Ichang Papeda look like. Because if you're not familiar with Ichang Papedas, they vary greatly between trees. Now, I do think this one is more typical of what you would see, and it does look a lot like the one they have in the University of California Riverside collection. If you look through the photos at their Ichang Papeda, this one is very similar. I'm not sure exactly about the size, but in terms of the quality and most of the components of the fruit, they do resemble each other. So I think this is a pretty good representation, and hopefully this gives you guys a good idea of how this tree might be useful to you, be it for ornamental value or any culinary purposes, which we will go over here because I have had the chance to sample more than one fruit and even pick a fruit up that had some seeds in it, which we'll talk about because hardly any of them did this time, which is very interesting. So we'll just take you through it from the top here. You can see already though, Ichang Papeda, based on how it scored and a lot of its characteristics, was surprisingly similar to Trifoliate Orange and actually inferior to it in some ways in terms of using it for edible purposes, which is really funny to say because usually Trifoliate Orange is, relatively low, if not one of the lowest on people's totem poles when it comes to edibility. So I found that very interesting, considering that obviously they are related being citrus, but they're not, Ichang Papeda isn't a hybrid of Trifoliate Orange, so there's no direct influence like that. But you can see the size of the fruit here. We'll get that nice and focused there. The fruit are relatively small. And the thing is, this specific fruit, we're going to cut it open and see. But compared to this one, which is looking pretty ugly now, this one's chock full of seeds. This one, I'm pretty sure, has no seeds. And a lot of the fruit, I don't know if it's because of when these plants bloom, because they seem to, a lot of blooms were starting to form on the tree right now. Which means these must bloom into the winter, which is a unique characteristic, and that could cause issues with fruit set depending on the type of winter. But last year we got a really mild winter, so it's no surprise that we do still have fruit, but that could affect pollination. And I have my suspicions that if I germinate a few of these seeds, if they're zygotic and they happen to be pollinated by one of the neighbor trees, which there was a flying dragon in close proximity to this tree, maybe there will be some cross-pollination. There might be an interesting hybrid there, some sort of Trifoliate Ichang hybrid. So that would be really interesting if that's the case, but it does seem like maybe depending on pollination or other environmental factors, a lot of the fruits just didn't have seeds, or the seeds were aborted really early on. So relatively lightweight, small, kind of spongy fruit here. And that's interesting. So it could have like a ton of seeds, or in this case it has none at all. But I do think it's more typical to see these chock full of seeds in there. And you'll already see as we go into kind of our next qualities about this thing here. Peelability, I almost wonder if I might change this, and this is probably going to affect the score. I don't know if you can consider this really peelable. I mean, I might still stick to unpeelable for now just because there's nothing to peel into. Like, there's no surrounding flesh to peel off of. So, I mean, you can take these apart relatively easy. They're soft fruit, but then what's inside, So, depending at the end of this, I might revise the score in terms of peelability and reconsider it. I mean, you can peel it apart and take it apart, but there's not a whole lot to peel into. Now, in terms of juice, you can tell, obviously, this is a poor fruit to use as an example, but even when it's full of seeds, there's no juice inside. And now I can show you, even on this nice fruit we have here, I'm going to move the leaf to the side. You can see that's for a size comparison, because just saying it's a small fruit doesn't tell you enough, but when you see it compared to its own leaves, I mean, that fruit's the size of a leaf petiole right there. So pretty crazy to see. It is very uniquely ornamental, though. It's a very interesting tree to look at. And it's kind of weeping in habit, too. So it has a lot of these huge leaves all hanging nice. It's a really attractive tree. But we can cut this fruit here now. And yeah, that's kind of similar to what I expected. And something interesting you could see here, too. The knife is already coated with resin from the last couple fruits. So this is a fruit similar to trifoliate orange that also has a resin in the rind and in the fruit that you'll notice when you're cutting it. You don't notice it so much when you actually go in to taste it, but there's not a whole lot to really taste. There is the pith and there's the rind, and that is about it. Good luck trying to find some juice in there. Now again, some variations do have juice, but this particular one you'd kind of treat almost more like a very unique Buddha's hand, because the taste and aroma are very different from a Buddha's hand, but similarly, it's not for juicing, like, at all. There's no juice there. In terms of zest, though, I did try this, and I'm going to give it just another little go. I'm going to get a little sliver off the top, and we'll taste that there. It's interesting. I put it at low quality because I don't think it's completely unusable like a trifoliate orange. It's actually less bitter despite the aromatics being similar. Yeah, that's actually not terrible. So the thing is, and this is kind of similar in terms of the flavor and the aroma and how we rate those things, I'm kind of basing it more off the zest and the pith here and everything, but that kind of has like a woody, piney, kind of vaguely lemony type of flavor. So you do get little lemon components, but there's a lot of upfront wood and pine. A lot of those kind of piney flavors that you'd get from trifoliate orange, which that's what makes these taste so similar to each other. So it's very interesting they share that characteristic, and they're both extremely hardy. So clearly there's something going on there, not just with trifoliate orange, but even this Ichang Papeda, supposedly hardy down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and this specimen tree has lived through close to that. So I can attest to them being hardy, but there might be some reason behind that. So it's very interesting to see if we could break that link with some new hybrids of these types of fruit. Now, in terms of sourness, there really is none. It's a mild fruit, and there's not really a whole lot of juice to evaluate. However, if we had a different sample, a different variation that did have juice inside, I would fully expect it to be just as sour as a lemon or a trifoliate orange. Bitterness is moderate. It's actually not as bad as I expected based on the taste. I thought the zest that we sampled there would be a lot more bitter because it reminded me of some components of trifoliate orange, and if you bit into the zest of a trifoliate orange, you would deeply regret it. So they are very different, surprisingly. And I'll go into one of the ways we're actually using the zest on here, which is an all-purpose cleaner. So we'll get to that at the end, but I've been letting that sit for a while, and you can see it's kind of coloring up, but that is a use for that there. Non-culinary, however, still something I thought would be useful to make of this, given the unique aromatics of the fruit. In terms of sweetness, though, there is none. It's not overly sour or bitter within the parts that you can taste, but there's no sweetness either. Going towards the trifoliateness, I actually consider it moderate, despite not being directly related, just because they're so similar. So this is probably the one exception in all the taste tests where I might be wrong, but this is the first one so far where the fruit is not a direct hybrid or, somewhere down the line of being a cross with trifoliate orange, where I consider it to still have trifoliate orange influence simply because it shares so many similar flavors and aromatics to a trifoliate orange. So that's very interesting there. Edibility, though, most people would not consider this an edible fruit. Even hardy citrus people would probably still lean more towards this being an ornamental. I'd say you just have to be a bit adventurous to use this one. It's the same as like a Buddha's hand. Different. Buddha's hand is a bit sweeter and has a little less offensive flavors. The woodiness can kind of get you on this. However, once you get past that kind of woody, floral, lemony aroma, the lemon component's nice and all, but those other components are definitely very interesting. You can candy these, and they wouldn't make a bad candied peel. They'd be very unique, and you could probably pair it with very specific things. But generally speaking, like I showed, an all-purpose cleaner is probably a good use for these, because I feel like those exact scents there, lemon and wood, work perfect with the cleaner, because a lot of the time if you are cleaning wood or countertops or anything like that, those are kind of desirable smells you look for in a cleaner. At least for me personally. My wife and I, we love citrus-based cleaners because they just smell really nice. And those woody smells are great too. So infusing them and combining them together, if I give this a smell, because this has just been sitting for a day, and you're supposed to let it sit for a couple weeks. Oh yeah, that's very interesting already. So you could see how that color is kind of bleeding in. Now this is just white vinegar and the peels mixed together. And it's already really infusing with those smells. I think that's going to make a very interesting cleaner, and we're going to try it out and see how we like it. But that is one of the 2 uses I thought of I could think for this fruit. And again, I can taste this just for the heck of it, but the pith in the middle here, I will say it's not bad, but I don't know quite what you'd use it for. You could use it, and there's some adventurous cooks out there who could figure out a purpose for it. But let me just taste this again to remember. Yeah, there's no bitterness at all, hardly any offensive flavors in there. It's just very, very plain. So, that's also something you can take into consideration if you wanted to, cook that with sugar or cook it with something. You could do something with that. It doesn't taste terrible, at least, but calling it directly edible, kind of tricky. But you can even see, too, if you see up close, you could see where there would be vesicles and kind of those fruit segments there where juice would be. But this particular variation just produces zest. It just produces the peel and the pith, really. And that's what you have to work with. Because again, when they are successfully pollinated, or when they don't abort their seeds, they are chock full of them. There's just massive seeds in there. However, I do think Ichang Papeda could make a very useful parent, especially being crossed with things like Citrandrin or Citradia. All those types of hybrids could offer some very interesting lineages to be doing breeding work with. So I do think that's something some of you guys may value. But just consider this, a lot of the strains of Ichang Papeda are relatively low to no juice. There are some that do have some. I believe I saw one that was in either Oregon or Washington that had a green flesh, and it did have juice inside. And I think the taste and aromatics were similar to what I described for out here, but obviously being a juice and being more acidic. So if you can imagine that, it'd probably have just as many uses as a trifoliate orange would. But that pretty much gives us the full rundown here on the Ichang Papeda. This is an exciting one that we are propagating both seedlings and asexually. grafting out what material we do have. So we're going to try and have some plants available in the spring for those collectors who want this very rare variety here. And we are going to be working on trying to breed with it. It is tricky with those bloom times, but if we can make something work, I would love to even just have that trifoliate Ichang Papeda cross. So we're going to germinate those seeds and see what come up first, but otherwise we are going to try and get some pollen and pollinate some other flowers with it and see what happens. But at this point now, I should have the score displayed here. It may or may not be the same as the one you see here. I originally rated it a 22, which places it a little below the trifoliate orange, and you can see all of the scores on our website to compare between the different varieties. But again, this one's probably the lowest at the moment, and the highest is the Karaji Mandarin at the moment. So things are subject to change, especially as we try different fruit, and we do average the results over time and base it off what the normal fruit would probably look like. So that's the score for this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments with what you think about the Ichang Papeda. Have you seen a different one? Most people haven't even seen this fruit. So here you go in the flesh. That's a real one there. Very excited to have the opportunity to review this with you guys this year. So I will see you guys next time, and thanks for stopping by as always.